What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of On the Break. We have a good one coming to you. And today we're going to continue our series of team previews for this upcoming season. The next team we have are the Charlotte Hornets. So, Trevon, the Charlotte Hornets had a pretty tough season last year. Not a lot of their players played in a whole bunch of games, especially their star player. Now, this upcoming season, they had the number 2 pick in the draft. A lot of people are looking to see how he does this upcoming season. So, what are your thoughts on the Charlotte Hornets as a whole as we go into this new 2023-24 season?
Yeah, pretty much what you said. You mentioned their star player, LaMelo, only played 36 games last year. He had a lot of issues revolving around the ankle. I think he tweaked it like 2 or 3 times last year. So that was very much hard to watch, especially as a North Carolinian like myself. But this team has pretty much been on the brink, like been very consistent, but kind of in a mediocre, underwhelming way. They've either made the last spot playing in that 9-10 game within the play-in. I think they made the 10 seed both years going on the road within the play-in. They have yet to win a play-in game. This team has really just not been able to reach that next step as far as success, especially postseason success. They have yet to see that. And you kind of hope that they'll start trending in the correct direction. This team changed coaches, went away from James Borrego and got Steve Clifford again, something I personally didn't like. But, they did reap a reward for, the seasons they have gone through. Like you said, the number 2 pick, Brandon Miller. And like you said, he was pretty much kind of being compared to as far as, the Hornets being criticized for not taking Scoot Henderson because a lot of people feel that you should go with the more talented player rather than going with the quote unquote best fit. I was personally one person to, pretty much feel okay and agree with Brandon Miller as being the pick because if you do believe in LaMelo like we all do, he's been an all-star before. His playmaking skills, a big point guard, that would fit. Brandon Miller fits very well beside him as a very well proven shooter. He has to improve as far as putting the ball on the ground, finishing also. He has that size, so we'd like to see him finish. Obviously, defensively, you want to see him improve. He has the frame to compete. I'm a believer that as long as you're not hurting the team, you're okay defensively. If you can be out there and play within the scheme, we can hide you a little bit and, plan around your weaknesses. I think you're good as long as you're not hurting the team. At Alabama, he averaged 19 points. He averaged 9 rebounds, which is something he's pretty good at. That'll allow him to push the pace when he gets a defensive rebound. He's not that great of a passer with only 2 assists. And he did all that within 33 minutes a game with other talented players as well. So you're pretty much hoping that he can translate that to the NBA. And then also looking down the road, you have a guy like Miles Bridges that is coming back. I believe he has 20 game suspension, somewhere
I
around
believe I,
that.
I believe it's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so hopefully he can fit back in. He was one of the best players they had before he got into that domestic violence issue. And you're pretty much just hoping that he can bring back some sort of consistent offense or some type of force for the team to rally behind because when he was there, they were pretty much hitting on pretty good cylinders. They're a fun team to watch. So as far as, their leaders, their best players, they had a very bad season, finishing with a 27-55 record. So that was almost last. So you're hoping when you get your best players back this year with the addition of a young star and Brandon Miller that you can at least see an improvement and start trending in the right direction for the years to come.
But yeah, Trevon, I think you hit on some good points. One of the biggest things that I noticed when looking back at last year for the Hornets is like you said, they were injured a lot. A lot of their players were injured or out for different reasons. And notably, LaMelo Ball only played 36 games last year. So when your best player doesn't play, a large portion of your season, then you're probably going to be expected to drop some games. And even their top 3 scorers, LaMelo, Terry Rozier, and Kelly Oubre, they all missed a lot of games, except for Terry. Terry played pretty much 60 games, and they only had 4 total players that had 60 or more games. Terry was one of those, but everybody else were below that. So with a lot of your players missing a lot of games, I feel like when you go through something like that, it's tough to muster up wins, especially when one player that didn't play is your best player. So that's one thing I think is if they can stay healthy next year, they will be better. How much better? I am not really sure if it's going to be in the top 8, especially in the Eastern Conference, where the Eastern Conference has gotten better now. I do think that they can compete more for a playing spot, especially when you look at the teams that are at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. I feel like they would have a chance if they can stay healthy. And you mentioned Brandon Miller, if he's able to come along as well, I think that they can compete for a playing spot. Now, Miles Bridges, I'm not sure how well he would get back into the swing of things, especially after missing a whole year of basketball due to off the court issues. But I think if he's able to come back, he's just going to help the team. I am curious to see how he does come back into the fold, because he was a 20 points per game scorer when he played his last season. But when you look at the top 3 scorers on the team, I'm just wondering how well he's going to fit in, because LaMelo, Terry, Kelly, they all average 20 as well. PJ Washington is the next person with 15. I would say if Miles Bridges is able to go back to the form he was at, maybe he can slide in at that 4th spot with somewhere around 23rd or 4th spot with 20, or maybe even be the second leading scorer. But I just feel like, to get his legs up under him, especially after missing a season, after going to have to serve somewhere around a 20 game suspension, it's going to take some time to get him back into the fold. So I'm not 100% sure if his addition is going to be to the level it was before he got suspended or before he had to take a year off. So we'll see how that goes. But one thing I'm really looking to see is the development of Williams, their center,
I was
because
just about to say that.
you and I know we've watched a lot of Hornets games. They've never really had a dominant center. I think the Miles Plumlee played very well, did his, played his role. I think the last like really, really good center was Jefferson from a few years ago,
Back in the
back
Bobcat
probably when they were
days.
the Bobcats. Yeah. So um, that's something I think they can benefit from if Williams is able to develop and turn into a really good defensive stopper and grab boards and catch and finish the basketball at a very good clip. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. I want to see LaMelo back in the fold, and in the fold, playing a lot of games, and also the development of their big man. I feel like PJ Washington is gonna continue to improve. He's pretty much gotten better each and every year, so I think that's going to be an addition. Would like to see him rebound the basketball better, but you know, I, I think the Charlotte Hornets, especially if they stay healthy, can compete for a play-in. I just don't know how much better they can get next season. I feel like it's going to take some time for them to keep going, and then also bring Brandon Miller into the fold and figure out how he fits into everything as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. You mentioned Mark Williams. That's where I was going to head next. He is somebody that I'm hoping can make an improvement next year. He was right under 20 minutes per game at 19. You're hoping that he can become that key, rotational piece. Charlotte has pretty much played a lot of small ball as far outside of the 5. We know they had Mason Plumlee last year, but they had a trade and he's no longer there. So Mark Williams is your guy. and then you have Kai Jones behind him. But Mark Williams is that guy that I was excited to have drafted into Charlotte because one of his rim protection mainly. He showed a lot of high side at Duke with his rim protection and his 2 years there. What I was hoping was for that can eliminate shots and get, the Hornets out in the break, which they were very good at, well, not last year, but the year before that when they had most of their guys there. So that's just the position that I would like to see Charlotte continue to develop. We know they have a lot of guys at the guard position, and we didn't even mention like Dennis Smith Jr., who got a lot of minutes due to LaMelo not being there. And they drafted two young guards that have yet to play in the NBA. How are they going to fit? Are they going to find minutes? Nick Smith Jr., Amari Bailey, they were drafted alongside Brandon Miller. So, there will be a development piece there too. So that their bigger positions, the forwards and the centers like Mark Williams and PJ, as you mentioned, they've shown production, but Mark Williams especially is what I'm hoping can turn into that guy where you can expect, a good 10 to 15 points, double-digit boards, and, he can get you 2 to 3 blocks on a good night. That's what would take them to that next step, along with the development of all the people that we mentioned, the return of Miles Bridges, Gordon Hayward, he's a veteran. He's still out there making plays and, producing with his experience. So that's pretty much what I'm looking for from Charlotte. But I agree with you. They could contend, but contend as far as a playing spot. But for my guess, I would guess that they could get maybe that 10, maybe 9 if they're contending in the playing spot. But depending on how injuries go once again, which, we cannot predict or really can't account for, I don't see them really going anywhere higher than that 9th seed.
Yeah, no, and when you look at the Eastern Conference, the top 6 from last year, I definitely don't see the Hornets being better than those teams from the top 6. Now we're talking about that next 4, so 7 through 10, and the Atlanta Hawks. I don't think that Charlotte can be better than them this upcoming season. I feel like the Atlanta Hawks would be better.
And that's a
Miami,
divisional rival. There's another divisional rival.
Yeah. Yep. Miami just went to the finals. Chicago Bulls, we really don't know what's going on there. They haven't really reached expectations. They had a really good year the first year they got DeMar DeRozan in terms of regular season, but they fell off in the playoffs, had injuries, all that stuff. Toronto always puts out a competitive team, but they actually just lost Fred VanVleet, and they've been in trade talks with different, scenarios being thrown out there. So, and we're looking forward to doing a team preview of them, but kind of don't really know what their team is exactly going to look like right now. But for the most part, they always put out competitive teams. And then now you're looking at the next 3, which are the Indiana Pacers, Washington Wizards, and Orlando Magic. I feel like Orlando Magic, Charlotte is in terms of overall talent, like they're kind of there, but I feel like they have the better player in Paolo. So I'm gonna put Orlando over them. Washington just got a whole bunch of new people. Jordan Poole, Tyus Jones. Indiana Pacers just re-upped with a lot of players they signed. Tyrese Halliburton was great last year, was an all-star last year, signed a new contract, looking to play even better this year. So I feel like it's still going to be tough for Charlotte, because I think Charlotte is a team that's still going to be figuring it out, even if they do get healthy and stay healthy for the most part. I think they'll be competitive. Just don't know if they can get past those teams that are in front of them right now for a play-in. But I feel like they will compete for a play-in. Just don't know if they'll get it. But that's just how I see that Eastern Conference right now. And, it's still like all the teams we've been talking about at the bottom of the league. It's about development, man. You're developing the young talent that you have and trying to figure out how to put it all together. But just to read off a few stats as well, like they were 22nd last year in points allowed. They allowed their opponent to score 117 points per game last year, so they're in the bottom 10 in that. And then they were bottom 5 in scoring, so they were a bottom 5 team in scoring baskets, and they were a bottom 10 team in allowing their uh, opponent to score. So that's just a recipe for disaster. So hopefully, with their players getting better, or with their players being more healthy this year, they can do a better job on the defensive end and score more baskets and see where they land there. So hopefully we'll see them being able to compete at a high level for the playing spot, and see where it goes from there.
Yeah, that offensive rating, I can see that definitely raising up. It probably won't be a top 10 offense, but somewhere between that 10 to 20, I can see that raising up, obviously with LaMelo Ball coming back. You obviously have Terry Rozier, who's been very consistent since he's arrived from Boston. And then with the possibility of Miles Bridges, I definitely agree with you about getting his legs back under him, because the game of basketball is mainly a rhythm sport. With being out for a whole year, dealing with all your off the court stuff, missing 20 games, the team isn't necessarily the same as the last time he was on the court. So finding that chemistry again, it will be an adjustment. And then obviously, Brandon Miller. So offense is coming back. I don't feel like that will be an issue for them. In the years where they were, interesting and fun to watch 2 seasons ago, that's what kind of, it was electrifying. You know what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
was a lot of highlights and, cool plays and explosive moments that you saw from them. The defensive area, which I think will begin with Mark Williams, is where we're going to have to see a ton of growth, but they don't really have defensive identity on the roster, if that makes sense. So that's going to be something that's going to have to be part of the growth and embraced by the Charlotte Hornets team in order for them to really make a push for us to take them seriously, as far as expecting something for them and jumping all those teams that you just listed off in the Eastern Conference. But offensively, if you can score the ball, quite frankly, they say defense wins championships, but if you can score the ball, you give yourself a chance. You don't have to be the best defensive team, which, most of the NBA champions are great defensive teams. The Denver Nuggets are the one anomaly or outlier, but, and even they, perform pretty decent through the playoffs defensively. But that the defensive side will solidify you, but that offensive side will at least give you a chance, to make some noise and, compete and beat teams. So like we said, expecting the bottom half of the plan, seeding 9, 10, I can see that for them competing. But within a year, I don't know if it's too quick a turnaround, with a lot of development and a lot of growth that needs to take place for Charlotte to make that next step, where I really think their potential can end up, in a few years.